Hi, this is Jack Downs. Welcome to the Class 2 Wednesday, the January 30th edition of JOU317, Web Design and Production. Sorry I can't be here with you today. Thanks for watching this video lesson. I hope you're probably watching this in the classroom. If you are not, or even if you are, I want you to know that you want to rewatch it. There are links to this video and some of the links that I use on Moodle, on the Moodle site, so you can go check it out again and rewatch part of it. I am going to be doing a presentation, some of which is going to be on our first quiz, so you'll want to pay attention to that and perhaps even take notes. And as usual, almost all the presentations, the actual presentations I do, the PDFs are available of those on Moodle also. Finally, if you missed the first class, you just enrolled for it perhaps, and didn't get the handouts that were done the first class, please see Emma, the TA. She should have extra handouts to give you, and she can help you get going. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask her, or you can email me. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. I expect to be back for Friday's class. If that isn't the case, if there's any change in my schedule, please watch your email. I would email you to let you know. Otherwise, expect me then, and we'll return to a normal class. If you hear any strange noises, I am recording this just after a snowstorm. There are plows and things outside, and my heater has just decided to start banging and making noises, so that may happen too. Please excuse those. Okay, so on to the start of the class, which is how I usually start a class, by going to Moodle. And here we are at the Moodle site. My screen may look a little different than yours, but you have all the same stuff too. Occasionally on my screen you'll see some things that you won't see because they haven't been released to you yet, but no big deal there. No big secrets or anything either. So here's the Moodle site, and as usual, we start with the daily schedule. And today is supposed to be for you. Oh, that's the wrong, sorry, I'm in the wrong Moodle site. Just back up a second here. I have grabbed the wrong one. So that wasn't your class. That would have looked very different. Let us just go to 317. That makes more sense. Okay. So here we are in the Moodle site, and I'm going to the daily schedule, and we're going to go to Wednesday. And the question is, what is the internet? That's the topic today. And there's a note here that says, if you don't have your text yet, get it immediately, and bring your text to every class. We're not going to be teaching from the text, but there will occasionally be exercises, or you'll be doing exercises and you want to refer to your text. So yeah, you know, I bet you some of you won't bring it every day, but yeah, you could. What was due this class? Probably, maybe this was picked up already. If not, please make sure to give it to my substitute before you leave today. The website I like assignment. The Moodle welcome assignment was just put on Moodle in the forum. And that was just for participation. If you haven't done that yet, please go do the Moodle welcome assignment. The website I like assignment, remember, was an email to me, which you then also printed to bring into class, which I know is a little bit old-fashioned, but it helps me keep track of it. And remember, the goal here is that you are not just looking at websites because you like the topic. You're looking at websites because you are trying to be critical about the structure, the user experience, the way the content is presented, how well everything works together, the overall design, colors, fonts, and so on. I'm hoping you're starting to be a little more critical about these things. You use the web every day, but you should start to evaluate the parts of it you use and think about, really, how well does it work? Well, how could you do better? What would you do differently if you designed that site, and so on. Okay, so let's imagine you forgot this, or you didn't do this, or you're just starting today. No big deal. The instructions, by the way, almost all my handouts are on Moodle also. And you can get a copy of it from Emma, too, from the TA. However, you could just bring it to next class. But remember, you do need to email it to me. What's due next class? Read chapters 1 and 2. You know, it says use PDF if you must. As it turns out, for this new textbook, there is no PDF. However, I've given you a handout of these first chapters 1 and 2. So you should be able to read those from that. But if you don't have your textbook yet, but if you don't have it yet, please get it soon, because they're not going to start handing out all the chapters or something. So that's what's going on. That's all that's due next class, is the reading. The reading, though, let me remind you, not so much in the chapter 1. To some degree in the chapter 2, certainly when we get into chapter 4 and so on, 3 and 4. This isn't just like skimming over it and generally covering it. And this isn't reading necessarily for a quiz either. This is reading because you really have to use this stuff. Essentially, it's like learning a language. So I strongly encourage you to read it carefully. And later on in the semester especially, you're not just going to read things. You're going to try things as you go. You're going to try to practice it and work on it and bring up the code and try typing it yourself and so on. So you have to really engage with the reading in this class. Okay, so there's where we're at. Just so if we look ahead, and you can always look ahead in my schedules, you'll see we're going to do more basics on Friday. Things will start going faster on Monday. We create a page, and you have a quiz on Wednesday. A quiz on Wednesday. And by the way, some of the stuff we do today is going to be on that quiz. So there we go. So let's move on to the presentation. Okay. So here's the presentation. So these are introductory web terms and ideas to get us all off on the right foot. This is connected to some of your reading. It's a different view on it, and I'm going to add a couple of things also. This also will help you take from the reading the things I'm really going to focus on for the future quiz. So what is the internet? The internet is a network of connected computers arranged in a cooperative system. Hey, that's really important, a cooperative system. There isn't some big world authority that is telling the internet exactly how to be. It's almost like committee meetings, and everybody has to kind of agree. It's a cooperative system to exchange information. They are governed by an agreed upon set of rules and standards called protocols. So where did this all start, by the way? There's some of this in your reading, how it started. The internet started back in the 1980s with ARPANET, the military ancestor of the internet. It was gradually open to the public. 1992 was the first graphical browser. In the late 1990s, I was working on my first web pages. I was working for a company called the Mining Company, which you probably never heard of. It was one of those early attempts to catalog web stuff and to create archived groups of links that are curated on different topics. My topic, as you would probably wouldn't be surprised to hear, was newspapers. And I was writing about newspapers and adding links to newspapers, and many newspapers were just going on the line for the first time. The mining company, who I worked for some time, and then it got a huge amount of money in the big internet bubble, was then sold. It was then actually turned into About.com, which actually is still around. So its mining company became About.com, and then About.com, after the internet bust, was sold strangely to a magazine company, and it's barely alive anymore. So, but the things that I was doing back then with building web pages, it's like so archaic. It's such a different world from today. Things have moved so quickly and changed so much on the web that it's just amazing. So this cooperative system has been building, and it uses protocols. Well, I know that's a very bureaucratic and official kind of word, but it's an important one because why? Well, all around us are these protocols. For instance, every time you see a P like HTTP at the beginning of a web address, that's a protocol. There's a lot of other protocols also, though. For instance, for email, have you ever seen an IMAP or POP? Those are the email protocols. If you ever set up an email account, you will deal with those. They're protocols. It's just an agreed upon set of rules to send information to use an email. Have you ever heard of FTP? FTP, that's File Transfer Protocol. Protocol, again, it's the idea of agreed upon set of rules that transfer, in this case, large files around. What about hypertext? What we know as the web. That's all a protocol also. HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So what is hypertext? It's when text on one online document automatically links to another document. It is the most fundamental idea of the web, or the World Wide Web. Remember, the web is only just a subset of the internet. Hypertext markup language, or HTML, hypertext markup language, is what you will be learning. Hypertext markup language is the language we use to create web documents. It is a markup language. It's not a programming language. That means that it's a kind of code, but it adds information to information. It adds structure to the information that you have that you want to present. I would say that writing HTML is kind of like having to write the rules for like a Word document every time you make a document. With a Word document, the Word document already knows like what's a paragraph, what's a heading, what's a sentence and stuff like that. It's part of its structure. But your information in a hypertext document does not know that structure. So we have to tell it, what is a heading? What is a paragraph? What is a list? And so on. We add structure to information. The other big technology that you're going to be dealing with is cascading style sheets, or CSS. And I want you to know what these things stand for, CSS and HTML. CSS is a style sheet language that we use to modify HTML documents, describing the underlying structure that will be presented. CSS controls such things as fonts, colors, background images, page layout. So think about it like this. HTML is the structure. It's like the 2x4s and the plumbing that are in your house. That you need a strong structure, or else your house will fall down. It's extremely important we keep that as structure. It is extremely important that not be presentation. Presentation, all the fancy stuff, is CSS. It's the more fun stuff, but it requires to give a really good structure first. CSS is like the paint on the walls and the little special design things that you do in your house. CSS is presentation, and so it's those things like fonts, color, background, images, page layout. So let's look at this in a bit better of an example. I've got a web document here, which is a very simple one. We'll start with this one. What if I want to see the HTML that's under there? Well, with any web document, if you do a right click and choose View Page Source, this works with any document. You can look at it. I'm gonna make this bigger so you can see. And what do you see here? Well, do you remember what that document looked like? Let me just bring it up again for you so that you can see. There it is there. It's got a little image. It's got a heading of some kind, right? It's got looks like a paragraph. It's got another little image and looks like another little paragraph. There's sort of a line there, and it's got another little line there. All right, so it's a simple document. Well, we have some information here that essentially says, hey, we're doing HTML. Then we have a head area. That's information about information. So that gives us a title. That doesn't mean the title that you viewed there. It's not a heading. This is sort of like the name of the page. It's what you would see in the search results. The first thing. So it doesn't appear on the page, it's the name of the page. The stuff that appears on the page is all in the body. So that's all the stuff that appears on the page. This is your first look at HTML, maybe, unless you've already had it before. We see in the H1, which is, by the way, that means a heading, a top-level heading, there's an IMG. You want to guess what IMG stands for? Of course you know what it stands for. It stands for image, right? And then an SRC, which means, essentially says where is it, what is it called? And then there's some information about it. This is Jen's Kitchen. It's got a strange special character in it. That's the apostrophe, actually. Jen's Kitchen. Where it says Jen's Kitchen here, that's Jen's Kitchen here. Good. Paragraph. There's a paragraph, there's some information inside the paragraph, something called a strong, something called EM. And guess what? Another paragraph with an image inside of it and some more text. HR, that's the rule, stands for horizontal rule. Actually stands also for thematic paragraph level thematic break, which means it's a new topic coming up. Then we have something called small and a copyright symbol. And then we say we're stopping the HTML. There we go. That's looking at the source code. By the way, we also saw there's something called kitchen.css, which is the CSS code that makes it work. Now let's look at this, not on the web viewing the source, but let's look at it if we actually took those documents down and opened them up separately. Okay, so this is your first look at Notepad++, which is the program you're going to use for most of the HTML and CSS that you write. Some of you may, this program is only available, this program is free for download, and there's a download link on the Moodle page. It's only available for PCs. We'll be using this in the classroom. If you have a Mac, there's some other options, some other choices. Maybe I'll remember to go back and show you that on the Moodle site. If nothing else, you could think about downloading your own copy if you have a PC, downloading your own copy of a of this program so you have it handy. Something else to mention. There's nothing proprietary about HTML and CSS. Let's say you write some using brackets or one of the cross-platform versions of code writers or some other program, some other operating system, doesn't matter. You write some HTML, you close it up, you come to the classroom, you open it up again. You could open up a Notepad++ from one program to another, doesn't matter. There's nothing special, it's just text. So you can open, it doesn't matter if you open it on a Mac, then you open it up on a PC, that's not an issue. Okay, that was a tangent. So here we are. This is, this, as you can see, is just what we looked at before. Jen's Kitchen is the title. Now the body begins, that's the stuff that's in the page. We got an image, right? A paragraph if you love to read about, so on and so forth. There's another little image. There's the rest of the paragraph, an HR, a small, and so on. Want to just remind you what this looks like and how I can tell from Notepad++. I can run this, launch it in Chrome, and here it is, the same page we looked at before, right? It's not as big because I didn't increase the magnification that much. So that's fine. Let me show you a couple little things. First of all, if I were typing in Word and I put a bunch of extra returns there and maybe a bunch of extra spaces in here, I would expect that would really screw up my page. I'm going to save my page and run it again, and guess what? It doesn't make a difference. HTML doesn't care about extra returns or spaces. All it cares about is these structural things we put in around the content. And they are usually tags that have two parts, like H1, open H1, close H1. Open paragraph, close paragraph. That's what it looks for. It sees one space, it gives one space. It sees 20 spaces, it still gives one space. It sees a bunch of blank lines, it still gives one space. These tags that go in pairs usually are all around us here in HTML. See? Small, small. EM, EM. That means emphasized. Strong, strong. That means important. Also, there are some single tags that are only single things, like this IMG. This IMG opens and closes. It just says, go get that image. It's only a one tag. It's not. There's no closing IMG. It says, go get the image food.gif. There it is. Okay, what else can I tell you? Well, there's this thing, this link to a style sheet here. Remember I told you HTML is structure, and this is all HTML, but there's a link to a style sheet. Well, what if that wasn't there? Well, guess what? I've got a copy of this document with the style sheet commented out, essentially disabled, with this little code here, which is a comment code for HTML comment. I'm going to go ahead and run this. Now this is still the same page. The only difference is this is with presentation. What do you mean presentation? Well, color. There's color on the type. There's layout. There's margins. See the margins? There's fonts. There's different fonts, a different sizing of fonts. But without that, the font's different. There's no color. There's no margins. So when we lose CSS, we still have plain HTML. We still have information. It still has structure, but we lose the pretty stuff. We lose the attractive presentation. And now, why don't we just take a moment and go look at that CSS? In this folder, I have lots of other stuff, but I got that kitchen CSS, which is what that file was, remember? So we're going to edit that with Notepad++, and here it is. This is what CSS looks like. Maybe your first look at CSS. And you know what? Take a look at it. You would be able to figure this out. This makes sense, really, right? It says body. What does that mean? Well, that means the body. It applies to everything in the body. It says in the body, make the font certain style, normal, a certain size. EM is a unit of measurement. We'll go over that some other time. And Verdana, that's a font. Make it Verdana. It says width, make it 80%. 80%. It says also has certain margins and auto, which is going to be centering it. Then it says H1, that was that heading. Give it a certain font and style, give it a certain color. Yes, I know that's a strange way to write color, but it is a color. We'll go over that later. Give it certain margins also. IMG gets certain margins. H1 IMG, the IMG and the H1 get certain margins. The small gets a certain color. That's that gray color on the small. So layout like margins, fonts, font sizing, color, that's all presentation. That's why it's in CSS. So that's your first look at presentation, at HTML and CSS. Now let's do something that's going to look more confusing. Let's imagine we go to a a really big and complicated page, not that little page we just went to. But what about this one? What about SUNY Plattsburgh's page? It's a big and complicated page. Doesn't matter, we can still do a right-click, view page source. Now, there is a lot of stuff here. However, if you went through this, you would see there's still a doc type, just like we had the other page. There's still a head, just like we had the other page. The head will close. After the head closes, someplace in here, after all kinds of stuff, we're going to have a body. And then we're going to, within the body, we have all these SVGs, all these strange codes. But if you look through this carefully and you kind of waded through all that stuff, you would eventually find the content on the page. Plattsburgh State, University, there's the hamburger icons, that's little icons. You would find all the text on the page, you would find it here. Yes, there's all this navigation. We're still in navigation. We're still in navigation. We're closing that div. We're closing the header. Finally, we're into some real content. We've got some links. We've got spring 2019 opening week information. Spring classes begin Monday, whatever. So you would find it. Yeah, it's a big, complex page, but it is just HTML still. It's just HTML. There are links to other stuff. It's interesting. You can learn a lot by looking through it, but it's maybe a little overwhelming. But I just want to show you can look at the source of any page like that, and then try to figure out what they were doing. Okay, let's go back to the presentation so I can figure out where the heck I am. So that was the first look at HTML and CSS. So what about a URL? Well, all right, here we have a URL, so URL bar, right? URLs. What is a URL? URL is a uniform resource locator. It's like the web address. Every page and resource actually on the web has a URL, the address where the pages or resources can be found. I need you to learn the parts of a URL. Here's a long URL. No, not that long, but it could be a basic one. HTTP://. That is the protocol. Shouldn't be a surprise because we have that P there, right? Which tells the server it says, hey, we're using hypertext transfer protocol. That set of rules, that's what we're doing. In other words, prepare to retrieve web documents or web resources. What's the www? Sometimes it's hidden. It's still there. Sometimes we don't really see this area of the URL. Even if the www doesn't appear to be there, it is still there. It is the host name. It tells the server we are going to use the World Wide Web network. Get ready to use it. It's the host name. What about this after that dot? Learningwebdesign.com, something.com, something.net, something.org. That chunk of stuff is the domain name. This specifies the server we want to reach. So it's kind of like the base name of that website. It's a really critical part of the URL. And it's also the stuff that you yourself can go out and buy or rent for yourself if you have a unique one that you want to get. You get a domain name. What about the stuff that comes after it? Well, sometimes it's very little that comes after it. Sometimes there's a lot. But the stuff that comes after the .com and then before we get to the actual document is called the directory path. What this really means is go in this folder, go in this folder. Well, go in the folder called 4E. Then you'll find a folder. We call them in the web, we call them directories, but they're really still just folders. Then you'll find the folder called materials. Then you'll find the folder called chapter 02. Then you'll find that's the document. So the directory path would combine with the document, makes an absolute path. Kitchen.html is the document. It's the thing we're going to get, right? And when you combine that with the directory path, it makes up an absolute path. So that's the parts of a URL. You will need to know those. More details. Well, here's something. I said there's a document at the end. It's usually a something.html. Yeah, there's others, .asp and so on, but it's usually there. But how come we went to SUNY Plattsburgh, there's no document there, right? It just says the domain name, and then it stops. But it got a document. I have a document here. How did that work? Well, there are default files. If you just use the domain name, the stuff leading up to and including the domain name, you will get the default file. Essentially, it says, oh, you didn't ask for any page? Well, you get this one. You get index.html, or whatever the default file happens to be. Well, when we make things, we make websites, in this class, we will usually use the simplest default file, which is index.html. There are more complicated ones, PHPs, ASPs, and so on. And there are other words besides index, but usually there is a default file. That's what you get if you don't ask for anything else. Also, we should all agree upon the idea of what a browser is. It is software that requests and interprets web documents or resources. It is called, some people call it the client. You use it if you are a web user. Common browsers are Internet Explorer. Boo, hiss, we don't like that one. We will not use that in class. Please don't use this in class. It's got so many bugs and problems. Chrome, I use Chrome all the time. Firefox I think is fine also. If you're using other operating systems, maybe you use Safari or Opera. And now, of course, there's many mobile browsers and other technologies that use the web. Screen readers are types of browsers for people who have visual impairment. So those are browsers. There's browsers now in lots of things. Then there's also the server. That's the place. That's essentially a computer. It's a high-end computer, but it's just a computer which is connected to the internet, and it's holding files. It's called a server. The browser sends information to and receives information from a server. A server is a computer running specialized software that serves up web pages and web resources. What do you mean web resources? Well, I mean, for instance, images or audio or video, stuff like that. So, an IP address. Here's the thing. You think when you type in, you go look for something, Plattsburgh.edu, you think that then your computer is sending a message to the server, and it's saying, okay, Plattsburgh.edu, I got the document right here, and it sends it to you. Well, not really. Because, of course, servers don't actually know what Plattsburgh.edu means. They don't talk in words. They talk in numbers. So if you want to know what is the IP address of someplace like Plattsburgh.edu or something else, I'll use this example here in just a minute. You can go to a domain name lookup service, a WHOIS service they call them. There's lots of them out there. Let's just go to this one. Here it is. It's called WHOIS lookup. So you can put in here either, for instance, a URL of anything, and it will give you lots of information about it, including the IP address. The IP address is every computer and device connected to the internet has a unique 12-digit identifier called an IP address. Frankly, we've just about run out of these numbers. So there's actually a new IP system that's running with more than 12 digits, but we'll stick with this old idea. It's still around. It's still almost everybody has a 12-digit IP address. We use a domain name. Servers look up IP addresses. So that's how we get it. So let's go to a website. I'm going to use Canton.edu because, well, here's the thing. Until recently, you could use almost any web address in a WHOIS lookup and get the IP address. But more and more websites are kind of hiding and masking for security reasons, so people can't get their IP addresses. You can still get lots of information. But if I realize that Canton.edu, SUNY Canton, is a example of one that I can fool around with. So I'm going to copy that web address just by selecting in the URL bar, the address bar, and copying that. Now I'm going to go to the WHOIS lookup, and I'm going to paste it in there. And I'm going to hit the enter button, and I get all kinds of information. I can find out when it was created, who it's hosted with. I can find out who's in charge of it. I can get their email address, their phone number. So I get lots of information there. And I also get this IP address right here. See the IP address? Here it is. Now, the reason there's not quite as many numbers is because there's some repeated numbers or numbers left out on purpose, but essentially it works out to 12 numbers, even if you don't see the complete 12. So now I'm going to go up to a new tab. I'm going to paste this in here. Well, 137.37.33.10. That doesn't look like a good web address. That's not going to work, is it? Oops, I don't want a plus mark. I want to enter. There it goes. Okay, sorry, a little restart there. And here it is. This is the Canton.edu that we got through using the IP address as opposed to using the domain name, which is there. There's domain name. So Canton.edu, normally we think we're using the domain name and that's what's getting us this, but really that domain name is going out to domain name server and getting the IP address, which is invisible to us but is there the whole time, which is really the unique numerical identifier of this website in this case. That's what we're really getting. So I have in here a little, just to go back to make sure you saw it. That's the IP address. Remember, we've got a WHOIS service, which is going to give us that IP address and lots of other information too. And you can look up any domain name, any URL on a WHOIS tool. And can.edu is the same thing as this numerical identifier. And if we want to know more about this stuff, we can go to ICANN. And this is ICANN. They're kind of like the big international group that keeps track of all these numbers, because of course somebody has to organize them all and make sure that all the numbers are unique and people get the number that they're supposed to, and so on. So ICANN stands for, if I can remember this, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. Oh gosh, I better look it up. Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. ICANN. That's what it stands for. Good. That's the organizing body of IP addresses. Okay, so I've got this little chart here about what happens when you are on your computer in your browser, or your phone in your browser, whatever, and you ask for a domain name, a URL. However, it's missing a step. So I'm going to try to draw that step in because it's what we've just learned. The idea of IP addresses, right? So I'm going to try to use this sketch screen, which means I'm going to be drawing on a screen, which always turns out to be hilarious. So here's your browser, your client. It's you at your computer, and you want to you type in a URL, a domain name, and some other stuff too. And it says, get me canton.edu. Well, it can't go right to the server where those documents are because it doesn't know what that is. It doesn't know what canton.edu is. Instead, what it does is that request goes out to I'll make an arrow. Ooh. A DNS, a domain name server, DNS. The domain name server, which is another kind of computer that just keeps track of all the numbers, all the IP addresses and all the domain names that they represent. It says, oh, canton.edu, I know what that number is. I'll send you the number. I'll send you the IP address. Sends it back to you. It says, here's the IP address. Here's the bunch of numbers that represent that. Don't show them to the person on the browser because he doesn't need to see them. She doesn't need to see them. She just wants to go to that spot and says, okay, I got the IP address. I'm going to send the IP address to the server. And the server is going to say, oh, I recognize those numbers. I know what document to give you. It's going to say, okay, I'll give you Jen's Kitchen, whatever. I'll give you canton.edu. That's that. It says, I recognize HTTP requests, that document to send you, and then it sends that document back to you. And then it says, oh, but you know what? That document calls for some other things. It calls for a CSS file. It calls for an image. It calls for another image. In fact, some documents call for hundreds of things. Each one of these is a request to the server, a request to the server. It goes on and on and on. In fact, it's one of our big concerns is that the too many server requests result in a really long time for the page to come back. So then finally you get them all, and the page is assembled in your browser. So let's see, are we still recording? Yes, we are. Good. Okay. All right, so that is about the end of that presentation. And remember, that stuff will be on our first quiz. Now I'll just finish that up and talk to you a little more. Once again, thanks for watching the video lesson. Please do your reading, and then I'll see you on Friday. Again, watch your email in case there's any other changes. If you have other problems or questions, ask Emma to help you. And see you later.